Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.
Ibrahim a.s. left Egypt accompanied by his nephew Lut A.S., who then went to the city of Sodom, which was on the western shore of the Dead Sea. And this city was filled with evil. Its residents waylaid, robbed, and killed travelers. And another common evil of these people were that the men had sex with men instead of women, so they practiced homosexuality. And this unnatural act later became known as sodomy after the city of Sodom, and it was practiced openly and unashamedly. And it was at a height of these crimes and sins that Allah revealed to prophets Lut A.S. that he should summon the people to give up their indecent behavior. But they were so deeply sunk in their immortal habits that they were deaf to Lut A.S.'s preaching and his call to his people. Swamped in their unnatural desire, they refused to listen, even when Lut A.S. warned them of Allah's punishment, and instead they threatened to drive him out of the city if he kept on preaching. Allah revealed in Quran chapter number 26 ayah 160 to 171, the people of Lut, those dwelt in the city of Sodom in Palestine, belied the messenger when their brother Lut said to them, "Will you not fear Allah and obey him? Verily, I am a trustworthy messenger to you. So fear Allah, keep your duty to him, and obey me. No reward do I ask of you for it. My message of Islamic monotheism. My reward is only from the Lord of the Alameen, mankind, jinn, and all that exists. Go you in unto the males of the Alameen, and leave those whom Allah has created for you to be your wives. Nay, you are a trespassing people." They said, "If you cease not, O Lut, verily you will be one of those who were driven out." He said, "I am indeed of those who disapprove with severe anger and fury this evil action of sodomy. My Lord, save me and my family from what they do." So we saved him and his family, except an old woman, his wife, among those who remained behind. Lut A.S. was sent to this group of people to the city of Sodom, where people were absolutely corrupt. They killed people, they robbed the travelers, and the most wicked deed that they used to do is the practice of homosexuality. They used to practice homosexuality, leaving the women whom Allah had made lawful for them. And Lut A.'s wife was amongst those who encouraged this act of indecency. The doings of Lut A.'s people saddened his heart. Their unwholesome reputation spread throughout the land while he struggled against them. As the years passed, he persisted in his mission, but to no avail. No one responded to his call and believed except for the members of his family. And even in his household, not all members believed, because Lut A.'s wife, like Nuh A.'s wife, was a disbeliever, And Allah declares in chapter 66, ayah 10 of Quran, Allah set forth an example for those who disbelieve, the wife of Nuh and the wife of Lut. They were under two of our righteous slaves, but they both betrayed their husbands by rejecting their doctrines. So they, Nuh and Lut as-salam, benefited them, their respected wives not, against Allah, and it was said, enter the fire along with those who enter. So if home is a place of comfort and rest, then Lut al-Islam found nothing of that sort in his house, because he was tormented both inside and outside his home. His wife was a continuous torture and he suffered greatly at her hands, but he remained one of the patient and steadfast with his people. The years rolled by and still not one believed in him, and instead they belittled his message by mockingly challenging him, and they said, bring Allah's torment upon us if you are the truthful. Allah mentions that in Surah 29, Ayah 29 of Quran. And overwhelmed with despair, Lut al-Islam prayed to Allah to grant him victory and destroy the corrupt people. And therefore the angels who had come to Ibrahim al-Islam and his wife Sarah with the glad tidings of their son, they had actually come with punishment or torment for the people of Lut al-Islam. But before they would come to the city of Sodom, they went and they had a little word with Ibrahim al-Islam, and they gave the glad tidings of his son. And after giving the glad tidings to Ibrahim al-Islam, they left Ibrahim al-Islam and headed for Sodom, the town of Lut al-Islam, and they reached the walls of the town in the afternoon. The first person who caught the sight of them was Lut al-Islam's daughter, and she was amongst the righteous people. She was amongst those who believed in Lut al-Islam's message. And she was sitting beside the river, filling her jug with water, when she saw these three angels in the form of men. And when she lifted her face and saw them, she was stunned that there could be of men of such magnificent beauty on earth. One of the three angels asked her, O maiden, is there a place to rest? And remembering the character of the people, she replied, stay here and do not enter until I inform my father and return. She knew what kind of people dwelled in the city of Sodom and what were the character, and she knew that people of that city will try to harm them with their indecency, with their act of homosexuality. So she told them to stay there and not to enter the city until she goes to her father and informs Lut al-Islam and then returns back. So she left her jug by the riverside and she ran home swiftly to inform the father. And she said, O father, you are wanted by young men at the town gate, and I have never before seen the like of their faces. And Lut al-Islam, on hearing this, he felt distressed and he quickly ran to his guest and he asked them where they came from and where they were going, and they did not answer his questions. The angels did not answer his question. Instead, they only asked him that if he could host them. And Lut al-Islam started talking with them and impressed upon them the subject of his people's nature. He tried to explain what kind of nature the people out there had, and Lut al-Islam was filled with turmoil because he knew what harm the people will try to bring to his guest, and he wanted to convince his guest without offending them not to spend the night there. Yet at the same time he wanted to extend to them the expected hospitality normally accorded to the guest. And in vain he tried to make his guest understand the perilous situation, and at last he requested them to wait until the night fell so that he could take these three men to his home when in the darkness, so that nobody comes to know about these guests. And when the darkness fell on the town, Lut al-Islam escorted his guests to his house, and no one was aware of their presence. However, as soon as Lut al-Islam's wife saw these men She slipped out of the house quietly so that none could notice her, and she ran to her people with the
حي
news
على
that it spread to all of the inhabitants like a wildfire. And the people rushed towards Lut al-Islam's house quickly and excitedly, and Lut al-Islam was surprised by the discovery of his guest, and he wondered who could have informed them. But obviously his wife, Lut al-Islam's wife, was missing from the home, and Lut al-Islam understood that it is none but his wife who has leaked the information. So when Lut al-Islam saw the mob approaching his house, he shut the doors, but they kept on banging on it. He pleaded with them to leave the visitors alone and fear Allah's punishment. He urged them to seek sexual fulfillment with their wives, for that is what Allah had made lawful. But Lut al-Islam's people waited until he had finished his short sermon, and they roared with laughter. They were blinded by passion, and they broke down the door, and Lut al-Islam became very angry at this behavior, this kind of behavior of his people. But he stood there powerless because they were such great in numbers, and all of them were on the same side, and Lut al-Islam alone on one side. And he was unable to prevent the abuse of his guest, but he firmly stood on his ground and continued to plead with the mob. At that terrible moment, he wished he had powers to push them away from his guest. And seeing him in the state of utter helplessness and grief, the three men who were actually angels, they said, "Do not be anxious or frightened, Lut, for we are angels, and these people will not harm you." So the angels tried to comfort Lut al-Islam, saying that do not be anxious, do not be frightened, because we are angels and they will not be able to harm us, nor will they be able to harm you. And as soon as they disclosed their identity and the people heard them, the mob was terrified and they fled from Lut al-Islam's house, hurling threats at them as they left. And the angels warned Lut al-Islam to leave his house before sunrise and to take his family along with him as he leaves, except his wife. And Allah had decreed that the city of Sodom should perish. And earthquake rocked the town, and it was as if a mighty power had lifted the entire city and flung it down in one jolt. And then storm of stones rained on the city, and everyone and everything was destroyed, including Lut al-Islam's wife. And the angels asked Lut al-Islam to leave the city before sunrise, because by then the punishment will come upon the people of the city of Sodom. And the punishment came in three forms, and one after another in successions with no gaps. Okay, first was a wild cry, the punishment of sound. Then the earth shook, earthquake came, and the entire city was lifted up and it was put upside down. And then the stones rained from the sky, and it is stated that as if on every stone the name was written of the person on whom the stone will fall upon, and as they fell upon that person completely perished. And the entire city perished, and no sign of living was left in that city. No sign of the city was left up to that. Allah the Almighty recounted the story in Surah 15, Ayah 51 to 77 of Quran. Allah says, "And tell them about the guest angels of Ibrahim. When they entered unto him, he said, Salamun, peace. Ibrahim al-Islam said, Indeed, we are afraid of you. The angel said, Do not be afraid. We give you glad tidings of a boy, son, possessing much knowledge and wisdom. Ibrahim al-Islam said, Do you give me glad tidings of a son when old age has overtaken me? Of what then is your news? The angel said, We give you glad tidings in truth, so be not of the despairing. Ibrahim al-Islam said, And who despairs of the mercy of his Lord except those who are astray? Ibrahim al-Islam again said, What then is the business on which you have come, O messengers? The angels replied, "We have been sent to a people who are mujrimeen, criminals, disbelievers, polytheists, sinners, all except the family of Lut. Them all we are surely going to save from destruction, except his wife, of whom we have decreed that she shall be of those who remain behind. She will be destroyed." Then, when the messengers, the angels, came unto the family of Lut, he said, "Verily, you are people unknown to me." They said, "Nay, we have come to you with that torment which they have been doubting, and we have brought to you the truth, the news of destruction of your nation. And certainly we tell the truth. Then travel in a part of the night with your family, and you go behind them in the rear, and let no one amongst you look back, but go on to where you are ordered." And we made known this decree to him, that the root of those sinners was to be cut off in the early morning. The inhabitants of the city came rejoicing at the news of the young men's arrival. Lut said, "Verily, these are my guests, so shame me not, and fear Allah, and disgrace me not." They, the people of city, said, "Did we not forbid you to entertain or protect any of the Alameen people, foreigners, strangers, etc. from us?" Lut said, "These, the girls of the nations, are my daughters to marry lawfully, if you must act so. Verily, be your life, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam." In their wild intoxication they were wandering blindly. So as-salihah, the torment, awful cry, etc., overtook them at the time of the sunrise, and we turned the town of Sodom in Palestine upside down, and rained down on them stones of baked clay. Surely in this are signs for those who see or understand or learn the lessons from the signs of Allah. And verily they, the cities, are right on the high road from Mecca to Syria, that is the place where the Dead Sea is now. Surely therein is indeed a sign for the believers. Allah also mentions in chapter 26, ayah 170 to 175 of Quran, "So we saved him and his family, all except an old woman, his wife, amongst those who remained behind. Then afterward we destroyed the others. We rained on them a rain of torment. How evil was the rain of those who had been warned. Verily in this is indeed a sign, yet most of them are not believers. Verily your Lord, He is indeed the Almighty, the most merciful." So Allah recounts this story in the Quran, and we know from the Quranic verses that when the angels came, and when the people were abusing them and were intending to harm them, the angels declared that we are angels, O Lut A.S, and these people will not be able to harm. And they instructed Lut A.S to leave with his family by sunrise, because in the early morning the torment is going to fall upon these evil people. And they also instructed Lut al-Islam that they should leave the city in the darkness of the night. He should take his family along with him, and they should not turn back to look what has happened to the city. He should not turn back or come back to the city back again, and he should go to the place where he is ordered to go. And then in the early morning the earthquake came, and the entire city was turned upside down, and the rain of stones of baked clay rained on these people, and everything was perished all at once, and the entire city was destroyed. All the criminals, all the mujrimeen were perished and destroyed, and they got what they were asking, and they were doubting, and the torment fell upon them, and everything was perished. The book was closed on the people of Lut al-Islam, and their towns and names have been erased from the face of earth. Gone are they from the memory. One book was closed of the book of the corruption. And Lut al-Islam proceeded towards Ibrahim al-Islam. He visited him, and when he recounted the story of his people, he was surprised to know that Ibrahim al-Islam already knew what is going to happen to the people of Lut al-Islam, because obviously the angels had told Ibrahim al-Islam beforehand that they have been sent down to the people of Lut A.S with the torment. And so Lut A.S continued to invite people to Allah's deen as Ibrahim A.S did, and the patient one who turned to Allah repentantly, and the two held firm on their missions.